I'm Anastasia Chatzka, a fashion designer with over 20 years of experience and a sewing educator. And I'm really excited you're here to share another sewing adventure with me today. Welcome to Sewing Anastasia, and today I'm going to show you how to stitch in the ditch and use a stitch in the ditch foot. If you're not already a subscriber to Sewing Anastasia, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when all the new videos come out. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for following along with me on my sewing adventures. Also, I'm now teaching sewing classes in person in my design studio in Chicago, Illinois, and virtually. So if you'd like to check those out, make sure you go over to sewinganastasia.com. You're probably wondering, what is a stitch in the ditch and when do I use it and why should I use the stitch? Well, a stitch in the ditch is most commonly used to keep a waistband down or a collar around the neckline. So I'm going to teach you how to stitch in the ditch like a pro. So I've made a little mini skirt sample so that way I can show you exactly how to stitch in the ditch on your next project. So we have the skirt, we've got the waistband, and we've got the facing. So what we're going to do is flip our facing of the waistband to the inside, and then we're going to pin and we're going to stitch right here in between the skirt and the waistband, and this right here is the ditch that we're going to be stitching in. I'm going to put some pins in this to keep it nice and flat, so I'm going to pin right into the ditch and back out because I really want to keep that area flat and visible. Now it's all pinned and laying nice and flat and it looks great. So now what we need to do is stitch right here in the seam, making sure that we're not catching the waistband and we're not too far down on the skirt. By doing this, it's going to make the stitch invisible. It's going to sink into that seam and you will not see it on the outside of your project. This is a really awesome technique to get down. For the first half of the waistband, I'm going to be using a regular foot, which is going to be the A foot from my Epic machine. And then for the second half, I'm going to switch over to the stitch in the ditch foot. Awesome little foot, but you don't have to have it to create this technique. When I start this, I want to make sure that my needle is in that seam. So I'm going to use the hand wheel to start it out to make sure it's exactly where I want it. And then I'm going to put down my foot. So I'm going to follow my seam with that little red spot that's on my foot. Make sure you take out your pins before you get to them. And we are going to back stitch on this. Now if I'm not using the stitch in the ditch foot, I like to pull my fabric apart to really make sure I can see that seam that's there. So we want to sew directly in it. Take out your pins and just keep working your way all the way down your seam. When you get to the end, back stitch and cut. You can't even see that stitch that's right here in the seam line, which is our stitch in the ditch. It looks awesome. And so you'll notice that it has caught the facing and the back, which is exactly what you want it to do. And you can't see any stitch on the outside. This is looking awesome. And we just use the regular foot for the sewing machine. So next I'm gonna go ahead and put on that stitch in the ditch foot and finish the rest of this little waistband up. So I've attached the stitch in the ditch foot and you'll notice this little metal bar on the front of it at center. And we are gonna use that as our guide for the seam line that's right here that we're stitching in. So we're gonna go ahead and put down our foot. It looks like it's lined up. Take out a couple pins. Now let's keep it nice and flat. We're just gonna keep that little metal horn, we'll say, the little metal front of it here, lined up with that seam. Make sure you're back stitching. And cut. On the second half here is where we did the stitch in the ditch with the special foot, and you'll notice that it also looks great. It helped us guide that stitch right into that seam there. And we also have our stitch on the back that's holding down our facing and our invisible stitch on the front in the ditch. Wasn't that easy? Stitch in the ditch is so easy for creating that invisible seam on the front, but sewing down your facing on the back. So again, you can use this for collars, cuffs, waistbands, anywhere you're putting a facing down and you don't want to see a stitch on the outside of your project. Thanks so much for watching Sewing Anastasia today. If you have any questions about stitching in the ditch, make sure you leave it down below and I'll get back with you as soon as I can. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, give it some applause, and leave a comment down below on where you see yourself using the stitch in the ditch on your next project. And I would love to see your next project, so make sure you tag me at Sewing Anastasia on Instagram, or you can DM me some photos as well, and I would love to post them in stories and share them with everyone. So let's keep each other creative and inspired. And don't forget, if you're not already a subscriber, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when all the new sewing videos come out. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for subscribing. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!